Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The Miami Dolphins have always been a franchise that lives in the middle of extremes. They flirt with greatness, but never quite grab it. They spend money like a contender, but finish seasons like a pretender. And while the players and coaches rotate in and out, one name has loomed large over this team for decades: Chris Grier. After 25 years in the organization and 9 as the general manager, the bill has finally come due. Years of questionable decisions, half-baked strategies, and misplaced priorities have stacked on top of each other like bricks in a collapsing wall. And now, as the Dolphins stumble through another season that feels far too familiar, it's clear to everyone watching that the Chris Grier experiment is over. For years, Dolphins fans have been told to trust the process. We've been told that patience was necessary, that the big picture would eventually come together. But patience wears thin when results don't follow. Chris Grier has had nearly a decade in the big chair to deliver a consistent winner, and instead what we have is a roster full of holes, cap space eaten alive by mistakes, and draft capital wasted on players who either never lived up to expectations or thrived elsewhere. This isn't a story about bad luck, and it's not about injuries or curses. It's about decision-making, plain and simple. And when the decision-making at the top is flawed year after year, the results we see on Sundays are inevitable. Take the secondary, for example. Miami's defensive backfield was once a strength, but today it's a glaring weakness. And the reasons why trace directly back to Grier's moves. On the 2025 salary cap, 2 cornerbacks who don't even play for Miami anymore are eating up over $30 million combined. Xavier Howard, now suiting up for the Colts, still counts nearly $16 million. Jalen Ramsey, who's wearing black and gold in Pittsburgh, is costing Miami almost $15 million. Add in the fact that Cam Smith, a second-round pick who was supposed to be part of the solution, has been a total bust, and it's clear that this is not misfortune, it's negligence. Noah Igbenegune, another high pick, was shipped off years ago after never developing into what the team needed. If even 2 of these moves had gone differently, maybe the Dolphins would have a respectable secondary today. Instead, the unit looks like one of the worst in the league, and fans are left wondering how so many resources could be spent for so little return. And that's the recurring theme with Grier. Spending resources is not the issue. He has invested in the offensive line, the defensive line, the secondary, you name it. The problem is how he spends those resources. Look no further than the offensive line situation. A narrative exists out there that Miami doesn't care about protecting its quarterbacks, that they ignore the offensive line in favor of flashy weapons. That's simply not true. Grier has poured draft picks and dollars into the trenches. Austin Jackson, a first-rounder. Patrick Paul, a second-rounder. Jonah Savaiania, another second-rounder who Miami even traded up for. Liam Eichenberg, yet another second-rounder Miami traded picks to acquire. Robert Hunt, a solid second-round pick who eventually walked. Laramie Tunsil, a first-rounder who became a valuable trade chip. Terron Armstead, one of the highest-paid free agent linemen of his class. Michael Dieter, a third-round pick. The investments are there. The returns are not. The frustrating part for fans is how the evaluations play out. Robert Hunt was the kind of lineman every team wants: reliable, consistent, and durable. Instead of paying him to stay, Miami let him go. Austin Jackson, meanwhile, had one healthy season where he looked decent, and that was enough for Grier to hand him an extension. Trading up for Liam Eichenberg never made sense, and re-signing him after years of underwhelming play was even worse. Tunsil, in hindsight, could have been the anchor of this line for a decade, but the Dolphins flipped him for a package of picks. Sure, Jalen Waddle is a nice player, but Ja'Marr Chase could have been the home run superstar Miami desperately needs. The result? The line remains shaky, the quarterback still takes unnecessary hits, and fans still ask the same question: why can't this team figure out the trenches? And the mistakes don't stop there. Let's talk about letting Andrew Van Ginkel walk. Here's a guy who gave you effort, production, and leadership, and instead of rewarding that, he was allowed to leave. Christian Wilkins, the heart and soul of the defensive front, a player who was loved in the locker room and respected across the league. Miami dragged its feet on his extension until his price skyrocketed, and then they couldn't keep him. Imagine how different this defense looks if Wilkins and Van Ginkel are still wearing aqua and orange. Then there are the splash moves that made headlines but delivered little. The Darren Waller trade was baffling from the start, and the Odell Beckham Jr. signing was a move that felt more about name recognition than production. For years, Grier has ignored the backup quarterback position, leaving Miami in the lurch whenever injuries inevitably struck, and forcing Mike McDaniel, in his first year as head coach, to keep Josh Boyer as defensive coordinator. That set the team back from day one. It's decisions like these that show Grier wasn't just unlucky. He actively created the problems Miami is facing. Of course, no conversation about Chris Grier is complete without touching on the quarterback situation. The decision to draft Tua Tagovailoa over Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, and Jalen Hurts will go down as one of the defining moments of his tenure. While Tua has shown flashes, he's never fully silenced the doubts. Meanwhile, Herbert looks like a franchise cornerstone in Los Angeles. Hurts has led Philadelphia to a Super Bowl, and Love is blossoming in Green Bay. If Miami had gotten that pick right, maybe all the other flaws wouldn't matter as much. But they didn't, and that one miss continues to cast a shadow over the franchise. Even the head coaching hires are part of the problem. Hiring Brian Flores when the organizational plan was to tank made no sense. Flores didn't want to tank, which created tension from the very beginning. The relationship eventually exploded into lawsuits and league-wide headlines that not only embarrassed the team, but cost them draft picks when owner Stephen Ross was suspended. Add that to Adam Gase, Mike McDaniel, and the overall instability at the top, and you see a pattern. Grier has never been able to align the vision of the front office with the identity of the coaching staff. That's why Miami still hasn't won a division title or even a playoff game under his watch. The truth is, Grier's time has simply run its course. 9 years is a long leash for any general manager in the NFL, especially one without playoff success to show for it. Most franchises would have moved on years ago, but the Dolphins kept doubling down, hoping that this time, the moves would pan out. Now, as the walls close in, it feels inevitable. Whether it happens mid-season or at the end of the year, Chris Grier's run as general manager is over. And honestly, it should be. Fans deserve better. They deserve a front office that maximizes its resources, that drafts players who stick, that builds a team with a real identity. They deserve consistency at head coach and continuity at quarterback. They deserve to watch a team that doesn't just compete in the regular season, but actually scares people in January. Chris Grier has had every opportunity to deliver that, and he hasn't. The Dolphins are not cursed. They are not unlucky. They are mismanaged. And the man responsible for that mismanagement has worn out his welcome. So here we are, at the end of the road. Chris Grier has spent 25 years in Miami and nearly a decade calling the shots. But the experiment has failed, and the results are undeniable. It's time for change. Dolphins fans can finally look forward to the day when someone new steps into the general manager's chair, someone who can build with vision, discipline, and purpose. Until then, it's just more of the same. Chris Grier, please turn in your badge. Your time in Miami is done. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? The sports world is buzzing with rumors and speculation as Stephen Ross, the enigmatic owner of the Miami Dolphins, finally broke his long-standing silence regarding one of the most shocking moves in recent NFL memory, the departure of star wide receiver Tyreek Hill. For weeks, the media has been swirling with questions, whispers, and conjecture about why the Dolphins parted ways with a player who seemed not only integral to their offensive strategy, but also a cultural icon for the team's fan base. Now, in a rare and candid interview, Ross offered his perspective, giving fans a glimpse into the high-stakes, high-pressure world of NFL decision-making, and perhaps unintentionally, fueling more debates than he resolved. The timing of his statements, coupled with the nuanced way he framed the situation, has left analysts, commentators, and superfans dissecting every word, searching for hidden meanings and subtle admissions that could hint at the future trajectory of the Dolphins franchise. Ross began by acknowledging the emotional and practical weight of the decision. "Let's be honest," he said, leaning back in his chair with a reflective pause. "Tyreek Hill is one of the most talented players I've ever had in this organization. His speed, his vision, the way he changes a game in a single play, it's extraordinary. But decisions in this league aren't made in a vacuum. They're made with the team, the cap, the future in mind. It's never easy, and this one certainly wasn't. His words were measured, but the undertone suggested that what fans perceived as a straightforward trade or release was, in reality, the culmination of months of internal debate, strategic calculations, and perhaps even disagreements behind closed doors. The interview quickly turned to the question that has haunted Dolphins fans since Hill's exit. Why now? Why let go of a player who was at the top of his game, who had a clear rapport with the quarterback, and who had become synonymous with Miami's identity on the field? Ross didn't shy away from the question, but his response was carefully diplomatic, leaving room for interpretation. Timing is everything in this league, he said, a faint smile appearing as if he knew the media would dissect his phrasing. Sometimes, opportunities present themselves in ways that are unexpected, and as an organization, we have to be prepared to act decisively. It's about positioning the team for long-term success, even if it's hard for some fans to see right now. The words were classic Ross, measured, almost cryptic, yet undeniably loaded with subtext. To insiders, it suggested that there may have been external pressures, salary cap considerations, contract negotiations, or strategic realignments that forced the Dolphins' hand in a way that fans might not fully appreciate. As the conversation deepened, Ross touched on the human side of the decision, the part that doesn't often make headlines but that plays a critical role in every major organizational move. Tyreek is not just a player. He's a person, a father, a teammate, Ross explained, his voice softening. We know the impact of these decisions on people's lives, and we take that seriously. Nobody makes a choice like this lightly. It's not just about X's and O's. It's about relationships, loyalty, and respect. It was a rare glimpse into the empathy behind the cutthroat business of professional football, the kind of insight that fans rarely get from an owner, who are often perceived as distant, calculating figures detached from the day-to-day realities of their players. Yet even as Ross emphasized his human considerations, he returned to the strategic justification for the move, creating a tension in his narrative that kept listeners guessing. Was this about loyalty, or was it ultimately about cold, hard strategy? The rumor mill intensified when Ross hinted, without confirming, that Hill's departure could be part of a broader organizational plan, something fans might only understand in hindsight. Sometimes, the pieces have to shift in ways that aren't immediately obvious, he said, his tone almost conspiratorial. A team is like a puzzle, and every move has ripple effects. What looks like a loss today could be the foundation for something greater tomorrow. It was the kind of statement that fueled endless speculation among fans and analysts alike. Some took it as a signal that the Dolphins were gearing up for a major acquisition or a surprise draft strategy. Others saw it as a subtle nod that the team might be planning to invest in younger talent or shift its offensive philosophy entirely. Regardless of the interpretation, Ross's careful choice of words has only stoked the flames of debate, with social media timelines flooded with theories ranging from the plausible to the outright fantastical. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Ross's revelation was the undercurrent of inevitability he suggested. At no point did he frame Hill's departure as a mistake or as a regrettable misstep. Rather, he presented it as a necessary evolution for the team. In football, as in life, change is constant, he remarked, almost philosophically. You can't stand still. The team, the league, even the players themselves, they're all evolving. Sometimes, that means making choices that feel disruptive in the moment but are essential for long-term growth. It's not about what you lose today, it's about what you gain tomorrow. The phrasing was deliberate and almost poetic for a sports executive, giving fans and commentators plenty of room to interpret what exactly the Dolphins might gain in the post-Hill era. Unsurprisingly, the media's reaction was immediate and intense. Sports networks ran segments dissecting Ross's every nuance, highlighting phrases like, opportunities present themselves unexpectedly, and pieces have to shift, as if they were cryptic messages from a master chess player. Analysts debated whether the move signaled a shift toward a more balanced offensive strategy, a focus on the draft, or even the early stages of a rebuild that could span multiple seasons. Fans on forums and social media platforms speculated endlessly, linking Ross's comments to potential trade targets, rookie prospects, and even coaching strategies. Every word was parsed, every pause interpreted, and the rumor mill accelerated, fueled by the ambiguity and careful wording that Ross deliberately chose. As the interview drew to a close, Ross returned to the personal dimension, reiterating that while the decision was strategic, it was also deeply human. Tyreek Hill will always be part of the Dolphins family, he said, almost as a benediction. We respect him, we appreciate what he's done, and we wish him nothing but success. But the team has to keep moving forward, and sometimes moving forward means making decisions that are difficult, but necessary. It was a statement designed to balance empathy with pragmatism, leaving fans with a mixture of understanding, frustration, and curiosity. There was no anger, no bitterness, just a clear-eyed acknowledgement that the business of football is, at its core, about preparation, strategy, and the delicate balance between loyalty and progress. By the time Ross concluded, the story had already taken on a life of its own. Pundits began speculating about which players might fill Hill's role, whether the Dolphins' draft strategy would pivot to focus on speed and agility, and how quarterback dynamics might shift in the coming season. Fans debated whether this was the beginning of a transformative period for Miami or a controversial gamble that could backfire spectacularly. The rumor mill continues to churn, amplified by Ross's carefully crafted words, leaving the sports world in a state of suspense, eager for the next move, the next hint, the next whisper that could confirm or challenge what Ross has suggested. In the end, the conversation about Tyreek Hill's departure isn't just about one player leaving a team. It's about strategy, emotion, timing, and the intricate dance that defines the NFL, and Ross has ensured that the world will be talking about it for months to come. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.